once again, and where I left off, the wargs were convening to see what to do about the hobbits and the trees. Now you can understand why Gandalf, listening to their growling and yelping, began to be fearfully afraid. Wizard though he was, and to feel that they were in a very bad place and had not escaped at all. All the same, he was not going to let them have it all their own way, though he could not do very much stuck up in a tall tree with wolves all around on the ground below. He gathered the huge pine cones and branches from his tree. Then he set one alight with a bright blue fire and threw it whizzing down amongst the circle of wolves. It struck one on the back, and immediately his shaggy coat caught fire, and he was leaping to and fro, yelping horribly. Then another came, and another, one in blue flames, one in red, another in green. They burst on the ground in the middle of the circle and went off in colored sparks of smoke. An especially large one hit the chief wolf on the nose, and he leapt 10 feet in the air, and then he rushed around the circle, biting and stabbing even at the other wolves in his anger and fright. The wolves, I'm sorry, the dwarves and the Bilbo shouted and cheered. The rage of the wolves was terrible to see. And the commotion they made filled all the forest. Wolves are afraid of fire at times, but this was a most horrible and uncanny fire. If a spark got in their coats, it stuck and burned into them. And unless they rolled up over quickly, they were soon all in flames. Soon, all about the glade, wolves were rolling and over to put out sparks on their backs, while those that were burning were running around howling and setting others alight, till their own friends chased them away and fled down the slopes, crying and yammering, looking for water. "What's all the uproar in the forest tonight?" said the Lord of Eagles. He was sitting black in the moonlight on the top of a lonely pinnacle of rock at the eastern edge of the mountains. "I hear wolves' voices. Are the goblins at mischief in the woods?" He swept into the air, and immediately two of his guards from the rocks at either hand leaped up to follow him. They circled up the sky and looked down below upon the ring of wargs, a tiny spot far below. But eagles have keen eyes and can see small things at a large distance. The Lord of the Eagles of the Misty Mountains had eyes that could look at the sun unblinking, and could see a rabbit moving on the ground a mile below even the moonlight. So though he could not see the people in the trees, he could make up the commotion amongst the wolves and see tiny flashes of fire, and hear the howling and yelping coming up faint from the far beneath him. You can also see the glint of the moon on goblin spears and helmets as long lines of wicked folk crept down the hillside from their gate and wound into the wood. Eagles are not kindly birds. Some are cowardly and cruel, but the ancient race of the northern mountains were the greatest of all birds. They were proud and strong and noble-hearted. They did not love goblins or fear them. When they took any notice of them at all, which was seldom, for they did not eat such creatures, they swooped on them and drove them shrieking back to their caves and stopped whatever wickedness they were doing. The goblins hated eagles and feared them, but could not reach their lofty seats or drive them from the mountains. Tonight, the Lord of the Eagles was filled with curiosity to know what was afoot, so he summoned many other eagles to follow him. And they flew away from the mountain, and slowly circling ever round and round, they came down toward the ring of wolves in the main place of the goblins. A very good thing, too. Dreadful things had been going down there. The wolves had been caught fire and fled into the forest that set it alight in several places. It was high summer, and on this eastern side of the mountains there had been little rain for some time. Yelling bracken, falling branches, deep piled pine needles, and here and there dead trees were soon in the flames. All around the clearing of the warg's fire was leaping, but the wolf guards did not leave their trees. Maddened and angry, they were leaping and howling around the trunks and cursing the dwarves in their horrible language with their tongues hanging out. and their eyes shining red and fierce as the flames. Suddenly, goblins came running up and yelling. They thought a battle with the woodmen was going on, but they soon learned what had actually happened. Some of them actually sat down and laughed, others waved their spears and clashed their shafts against their shields. Goblins are not afraid of fire, and they soon had a plan which seemed to them most amusing. Some got the wolves together in a pack, some stacked fern and bushwood around the tree trunks. Others rushed round and stamped and beat and beat and beat until all the flames were put out. But they did not put out the fire nearer to the trees where the dwarves were. That fire they fed with leaves and dead branches and bracken. Soon they had a ring of smoke and a flame all around the dwarves, a ring which they kept from spreading outwards, but it closed slowly in, till the running fire was licking the fuel piled under the trees. Smoke was in Bilbo's eyes. He could feel the heat of the flames, and through the reek you could see goblins dancing around in a circle like a summer bonfire. Outside the ring of dancing warriors with spears and axes stood the wolves in respective difference, watching and waiting. You hear the goblins beginning a horrible song.
Birds, 15 birds in 5 fir trees, the feathers were fanned in a fiery breeze. But funny little birds, they had no wings. Oh, what shall we do with the funny little things? Roast them alive or stew them in a pot, fry them, boil them and eat them hot.
Then they stopped and shouted out, "Fly away, little birds! Fly away if you can! Come down, little birds, or you could roast in your nest! Sing, sing, little birds! Why don't you sing? Go away, go away, little boys!" shouted Gandalf and answered, "It isn't nesting time. Also, naughty little boys that play with fire get punished," he said, and to make them angry, and to show them that he was not frightened of them, though of course he was, wizard though he was. But they took no notice of him on singing.
Tree and fern, shrivel and scorch, a fizzling torch to light the night for our delight. Yay! Bake 'em and toast 'em, fry 'em and roast 'em, till beards blaze and eyes glaze, till hair smells and skins crack, fat bents and bows black. His cinders lie beneath the skies, the dwarfs shall die, and light the night for our delight.
And with that, Yahoy, the flames under Gandalf's tree. In a moment, it spread to others. The bark caught fire. The lower branches cracked. Then Gandalf climbed to the top of his tree. The sun's splendor flashed from his wand like lightning as he got ready to spring down from on high, right among the spears of the goblins. That would have been the end of him, though he would probably have killed many of them as he came hurtling down like a thunderbolt. But he never leaped. Just at that moment, the Lord of Eagles swept down from above, seized him in talons, and was gone. There was a howl of anger and surprise from goblins. Loud cried the Lord of Eagles, to whom Gandalf now had spoken. Back swept the great birds that were with him, and down they came like huge black shadows. The wolves yammered and gnashed their teeth. The goblins yelled and stomped with rage, and flung their heavy spears in the air in vain. Over them swooped the eagles. The dark rush of their beating wings smote them to the floor or drove them away. Their talons tore at the goblins' faces. Other birds flew to the treetops and seized the dwarves, who were scrambling up now as high as they fired, as they dared to go. Poor little Bilbo was nearly left behind again. He managed to catch hold of Dory's legs, as Dory was born last of all, and they went together above the tumult and the burning, Bilbo swinging in the air with his arms nearly breaking. Now, far below, the goblins and the wolves were scattering far and wide in the woods. A few eagles were still circling and sweeping above the battleground. The flames about the trees sprang up suddenly above the highest branches. They went up in crackling flame. There was a flurry of sparks and smoke. Bilbo had only escaped just in time. Soon the light of the burning was faint below, a red twinkle on the black floor, and they were high up in the sky, rising all the time in strong, sweeping circles. Bilbo never forgot that flight. Clinging to Dory's ankles, he moaned, "My arms! My arms!" But Dory groaned, My poor legs! My poor legs! At the best of times, heights made Bilbo giddy. He used to turn queer if he looked over the edge of a quiet little cliff, and he had never liked ladders, let alone trees, never having had to escape from wolves before. So you can imagine how his head swam now when he looked down between his dangling toes and saw the dark lands open up beneath him. Touched here and there were the light of the moon on a hillside rock or a stream in the plains. The pale peaks of the mountains were coming nearer. Mountain-lit spikes of rock sticking out of black shadows. Summer or not, it seemed very cold. He shut his eyes and wondered if he could hold on any longer. Then he imagined what would happen if he did not. He felt sick. The flight ended only just in time for him, just before his arms gave way. He loosed Dory's ankles with a gasp and fell into the rough platform of an eagle's eyrie. There he lay without speaking, and his thoughts were a mixture of surprise at being saved from the fire and fear lest he fell off the narrow place into the deep shadows of it on either side. He was feeling very queer indeed in the head. By this time, the dreadful adventures of the last 3 days with nothing to eat, and he found himself saying aloud, "Now I know what a piece of bacon feels like when it suddenly plucked out of the pan with a fork and put back on the shelf." "No, you don't," he heard Dory answering, "because the bacon knows that it'll get back in the pan sooner or later, and it is to be hoped he shan't. Also, eagles aren't forks." "Oh no, not a bit like storks. Forks, I mean," said Bilbo, sitting up and looking anxiously at the eagle, who was perched close by. He wondered what other nonsense he had been saying, and if the eagle would think it rude. You ought not to be rude to an eagle. When you were only the size of a hobbit and you were up in his area at night. And with that, I'm going to stop right now. Thank you guys for joining me.